Let's drink some tea and talk about my health. Hey guys, so I made a version of this video about a month ago and I scrapped it because I was trying to do a thing. I was like trying to make it part of a vlog. That didn't work out. It just felt like it was too much was happening. So I decided to do a sit down video instead. And the reason I'm doing this, even though it's been several months since I actually had and got over my COVID illness, was because I've gotten a lot of questions. So I continue to receive questions in the videos, and some folks, will only find me through that one video and maybe come back just to see if I have followed up. So I'm mostly doing this for their sake, for anyone who wants to know how I recovered. The TLDR version is I'm fine. I'm fully recovered. I recovered a month in, and I did recover my sense of smell. All the pain went away. All the stuff got back to normal, or as normal for me as a person with chronic health issues. So no, I don't have long-term COVID or anything like that. So that's the short version. The long version is more of the details. So for anyone who was interested, particularly in my recovering my sense of smell, that's what a lot of the questions I get in those earlier videos are about. This is for you. So as I've said in a few of the vlogs, if you haven't seen those, obviously I totally understand. But in documenting my daily lives, my daily life, I've noted as the symptoms improved. It took about 2 full weeks of illness for me to start feeling better. So by the time that my symptoms first appeared to the point at which I no longer felt miserably sick, that was about a 2-week period. Then it was about another 2 weeks before I started to recover my sense of smell. I didn't notice my loss of smell until a few days into the infection. I might have been losing it earlier, but I was so stuffy I wouldn't have noticed regardless. The actual period of symptoms was pretty quick. It was like a 2-week illness. I did not feel as terrible in my body as I have felt when I've had the flu. I had the flu, the last time I had the flu was in 2017, and that was a really bad one. I could feel it in all my bones. That was a nasty, nasty flu. And it didn't feel that way physically. I was very tired for the first few days. I had that terrible sinus pressure that I talked about in the videos, and then I had that really bad jaw pain. Other than the facial pains, I didn't experience any pains in my body, which was good because I could still continue doing stuff and living my life. I had the fatigue, which lingered for a bit longer, but as with any illness, I tend to take a little bit longer to recover because I do have hypothyroidism, which I'm under control, but it does affect your immune system overall. So I can understand why it might take me a little bit longer to recover from an illness as opposed to someone else. It was a similar experience in the times when I have had the flu. It takes me just a little bit longer to recover and kind of feel back to myself. I would say that by the end of August, I was fully 100% recovered. It started sometime around July 4th, and so that's the tentative date that I have, at least for when I went positive, was on July 5th. So sometime around that time period is when I started to have the bulk of my symptoms. Like I said, solid 2 weeks. So think sometime around mid-July, I was recovering from the physical illness, and I did not have any long-term symptoms after, other than the loss of sense of smell and that little bit of lingering fatigue. I started to do smell training for the loss of smell. I had looked up the studies where you take, your different types of essential oils and you sniff them, breathe them in, try to breathe them in at least for about 25 seconds, stop, take a pause, do it with a different oil. And I did that with lemon, eucalyptus, I think peppermint, something like that, a couple minty ones, and then I had geranium because it says to use rose, but rose is one of my migraine triggers, so I would never keep that in the house. So I had a geranium, which is a floral scent, and I figured trade a flower for another flower. So I did that. I do think it helped. I did start to notice that I could at least feel the menthol of the eucalyptus pretty early on. That was the first one that I started to notice. And if I recall correctly, after eucalyptus, I started to smell lemon. The other two took a little bit longer to come through, but eucalyptus and lemon definitely started to come through earlier. I think one of them was like a woodsy one, so maybe I was using like copaiba or something like that. Like it was like a woodsy scent. It's like a combination of smells. That took its time to like fully come back to itself, and I knew this because I have a very sensitive sense of smell, and to a lot of scents are migraine triggers. There was a period of time where like the blessing in disguise was that I was not getting triggered by scents, so I could walk right by a bonfire and not be triggered by smoke. That would have been lovely to keep as a talent, but I don't have that anymore, so I am glad to have fully recovered my sense of smell. I do wish I had lost my migraine triggers, but alas, that is not to be. So that's the reality. Now, it did come on, I think in one of the videos where I talked about this earlier, I described it as like a tap turning on, like when you're like, if you're very slowly turning on the tap, and you start with like some drops and then a trickle, and then the trickle becomes a slightly bigger stream, and you know, like that kind of metaphor. Like that's what my sense of smell recovery was like. Like it started with a, oh, I could smell something and I caught a whiff of it, and then, you know, like it kind of went away to like, well, I can smell that, and then it started to be like certain things that I could smell. Coffee is one of the scents and flavors that was off for a while, and one of my coworkers had experienced a similar thing when she had probably the Delta variant early on, and so she had described it to me, and I kind of knew what that was when it started happening. But coffee started to taste very chemically. It was one of the first things where I was like, something's up. And so coffee was one of the first like indications that something was going on with my nose. It started to taste chemically, and then as it slowly started to return, that weird unpleasant chemically taste started to go away. I would describe it as, if you live in a place where they like to like treat water on a regular basis, the first days of like water treatment, you kind of taste chlorine. That's kind of what it would taste like. And at first I thought that they had just treated the water locally, and no, that wasn't it. It was, in fact, that I was losing my sense of smell and my taste was affected. So that started to fade away as my sense of smell returned and I was able to reacclimate to the taste of things. Other things that were affected for a while, like I couldn't taste anything like pungent that I would normally taste, so I also knew that that was off. So like for instance, kimchi, like I couldn't smell it and I couldn't taste it, and that's, if you've ever smelled kimchi, it's a very pungent fermented smell, so I did not smell that, and I knew that that was also off. So every so often I would just like smell the jar of kimchi that I have to like check if that was coming back. And as I said, as it started to come back, I was like, there's the little slightly vinegary spicy scent, and it came back that way. I would say that by middle of August, I was able to smell most things, and by like the end of August, I felt like I had recovered like 99% of my ability. At that point, I was still, compared to my previous as a baseline, I was still like not 100% back to it, because as I mentioned, I have a very sensitive sense of smell, and I can sometimes smell something that's pretty far away, or like a whiff of, you know, smoke. If somebody's smoking outside, like downstairs, I'll smell it up here. So it's, I just, you know, like a difference for me, but maybe for somebody else it wouldn't be as noticeable, because if you don't have such a highly sensitive nose, like you might not notice something like that. It might just feel like you're back to normal. So at that point it was like a 99%. At this point, it is now November. We are in the middle of a hurricane. That's why it's so dark and gloomy. So at this point now, you know, several months in, I am fully back to myself. My energy levels are back to what they used to be, which again, for somebody with a thyroid disorder, comes and goes as far as like peaks and ebbs and flows of energy, but I am me, myself again. And that's great. So I am glad that I did not suffer any greater consequences. I'm also glad that it was a strain that, while pretty dramatic, was not as terrible as some of the others. My mother had the Delta variant, and she had a much worse experience than I did, as far as like not being able to do much, not being able to move, and having to do so because she's my grandmother's full-time caretaker, and there was no help at that point because of the illness. So I am grateful that, you know, I was at that point double vaxxed and boosted, but my booster, as I also mentioned on another comment somebody had asked, I had COVID in July. My booster was from October of the previous year, so it was a significant amount of time from the time of the actual injection, and I know that the protection was pretty low at that point. So I figure, you know, between my immune system being as good as it can get and, you know, the extra support from the vaccine, then I attribute it to that, because honestly, I was a sick child. I have had many illnesses, and I do not play with my health. So think what you will, you know, if you're an anti-vax person, I'm not here to debate or argue about this, and I will just like close comments and call it a day. So keep your opinions to yourself if that's your opinion. We're all entitled to our opinion, and we're all entitled to do what we need to for our health, and I did what I felt was right for me. Just putting that out there as a disclaimer. For anybody else, this video is strictly just, for those who were curious and were asking questions. But yes, overall, I'm fine, I'm healthy, I am doing as well as I can be with my, you know, existing health conditions, and nothing long-term. I did go in for a checkup. All my vitals were normal, all my labs were normal, my EKG was normal, you know, everything else came out fine. I haven't seen any other symptoms or long-term consequences, so I'm doing good. And I really hope I do not get it again. And if you haven't caught it, I hope you don't catch it either, because it's not pleasant at all. But, you know, take care of yourselves, do what you have to do, and I will check in with you guys later. Probably another vlog going up soon this week. And yeah, I'm just going back to my regular old self and doing what I do, which is sometimes not much of anything. So I'll see you guys around, and thanks for asking, those of you who have asked how I'm doing. Yeah, I'm fine. So thank you for your concern, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.